If you can point to anywhere in life that you've been successful, and there's got to be at least one, if not many, it wasn't that
Hmm.
thing that made you successful. It was you. And those characteristics and those traits that made you successful in one endeavor are transferable to anything
Mm.
that you want to do. I always like to say, look yourself in the mirror and say three words: why not you?
Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show, where I am having a fascinating conversation with a newish friend of mine. The author is Craig Siegel, and the book is The Reinvention Formula. And it's funny, we met through, I don't know, I think he might have been on his podcast, maybe is how we met. But he's someone at the moment we connected. And maybe it's because I'm a New Yorker, even though I don't have the accent that he has. But there's something that was so like just down to earth and kind of real about him and how he left Wall Street to basically do this massive pivot in his life. He's got a very successful podcast, which was great. And he's got a company called Cultivating Lasting Symphony. He's an inspirational speaker, and he's all about sort of removing the limitations and blocks to the things that we really want to do in our lives. So I feel like his stuff is very accessible. It's kind of simple, not simple in a bad way, but simple, like straightforward. Like you could make a change. And just his whole story of being very successful on Wall Street and leaving that arena to basically break out on his own. And now he's writing this book and sharing about that and different strategies for you to slowly but surely do the same or change anything in your life that isn't in your highest and best interest. So I hope that you enjoyed this interview with Craig Siegel as much as I enjoyed interviewing him. I'm super excited to welcome my friend Craig Siegel to the Terri Cole Show. Hey, Craig, welcome.
Hey, you. It's great to be here. Every single time you and I get together, we create magic. I have so much love for you. Let's have some fun.
Let's just have some fun. Well, I want to start by saying congratulations, because in exactly 5 days from now, and it's available for pre order right now, and this is your first book, right?
That's correct.
Your very first book, The Reinvention Formula, is available. So it is actually going to be published on the 15th of August. So this is super exciting. I always want to start with sort of backstory, right? So before we even get to what inspired you to write the book, because I know your life is a big reinvention. So can you share with us how you got here? Like what brought you to the point of where you are right now in your life?
Yeah. A word that just came to mind straight off the cuff is pain. And I like to say pain is the portal. So essentially, I grew up not knowing what I wanted to do. I was a little bit insecure. I was a little bit shorter, had a little acne, but I always had an edge. I always felt like I was here for much more than I was currently settling for, but I wasn't able to figure it out. And so I went to college after high school because that's what I was supposed to do. And then I graduated, and then it was like, now what? But I lived in New York and I was ambitious, and I'd always been infatuated with stocks. So I went to Wall Street. And it was at that moment, which is very pivotal in my story, that I also stumbled upon personal development, or as I like to call it now in the book, human development. And I
Mm.
started to understand that where I was at was not an indication of where I can go and who I can become. And I could start to cultivate confidence, and I could remove limitations, and I could think and play bigger. And so I ended up spending 13 years on Wall Street. And as you can imagine, with the unpredictability of that industry, it was a lot of fun until it wasn't. And I knew I was meant for something else, but I kind of got stuck. And I had pivoted from the stock thing and started my own business. And even though it was lucrative and I was having success, and I put in quotations for your listeners, because at that season of life, I determined success to be how much money you make. And just to be clear,
Sure.
that's definitely a part of success, but not the whole thing. And so after finding myself in a really dark season, about 3.5 years ago, prior to the pandemic, had just got my dad, my best friend, just got diagnosed with cancer, still battling,
Mm.
and just got out of a toxic relationship. And even though I had my own business, wasn't exactly putting a dent in the universe by any means. In fact, it felt pretty icky. And so from there, and the reason why I started the conversation with the pain is because I wasn't in war, nothing too drastic happened. My pain was my pain. I think everybody has their own emotional and spiritual pain. It got dark. I was anxious about the future. I didn't know where it was going. I was depressed about the past. I was exactly where I wasn't supposed to be, and thinking about everywhere but the
Mm.
moment. And then all of a sudden, I found myself drinking more than I'd like to admit. I think I was trying to escape my reality. But Terry, I didn't stay
Yeah.
there long. Talk about divine, and as you read in the book, I don't know if I found running or running found me, but I started running a bunch of marathons, and I had never been a runner before. And for me, this wasn't like the physical component. I was just looking to find myself, to get some confidence, to do some hard things, hold myself accountable. And that kind of became like a gateway drug for me to the pandemic, where, it was obviously a global awakening. But for me, and I know you and a lot of other people that we're friendly with, I looked at this as a historic opportunity to just pause, reassess, get quiet, block out the interference. And I just connected. And I started getting these spiritual, creative, divine downloads, had a spiritual awakening. And I was like, I don't want to go back. Why am I here? And I started to feel those tugs like in the soul, and you know this better than anyone, that's the volume that you want to raise. And it was like, of course, I've been obsessed with personal development for 15 years. I think this might be more than just a passion. I believe this actually might be my assignment, my calling. Literally, the
Mm.
next day on a run came to me, my brand, CLS, Cultivate Lasting Symphony, of playing my initials. I came back home and I turned my phone around. I didn't even have a laptop for the first 8 months of CLS. And I gave myself a mission statement on what this might look like. I don't want to be Tony Robbins, I want to be the first Craig Siegel, but I reverse engineered this big audacious plan. And then I got to work. But right then, right when I got to work, I had that moment of imposter syndrome. Who's going to want to listen to me? I have no experience. I have 300 Instagram followers. And then I considered the COI, the cost of inaction. And for
Yeah.
me at that moment, I made it so real for myself. I would actually rather die than choose to go back and be miserable out of alignment. And so I leaned in. The universe like that. And as I like to say, it doesn't take time, it just takes alignment. And then the brand exploded over the last 2.5 years. The book deal,
Right.
the podcast, the communities, the coaching, sold the business on Wall Street. This is it for me, just getting warmed up. And as I like to say, it took me 35 years, but better late than never. I finally got into alignment.
Right. So beautiful. I want to talk a little bit more, though, about cost of inaction,
Mm.
because I think that that is something that I would find this with my therapy clients too. Either people get paralyzed with being afraid to make a decision, or they want to make the perfect decision. And I never said it, COI, but I always was sort of pointing out, if you don't take action in some way, you don't have to know exactly like what you're going to do. You just got to do something that's at least towards being in alignment, as you say, with your true calling, with who you are, with what you want, something that lights you up. Because what happens if we continue to not make a decision or take action, those decisions get made for us. The inaction actually is an action that does not produce the result we are seeking.
That's right. It's so good.
You know?
And as I always like to say, like, a lot of people are like, I don't have it all figured out yet. And two things, right? Give yourself permission to be less than perfect. And something that I've really discovered over the last 2.5 years, because spoiler alert, I'm still figuring things out. But what I discovered is that clarity follows action, right? So first you get going, you lean in, and then you figure things out along the way. And you know what? If you are courageous enough and you take that shot, it might not be the thing, but most likely it's going to be the thing that leads to the thing. But you'll never
Right.
know if you're paralyzed by the fear of not having clarity.
Yeah. Or not succeeding. Like I always try to, I love the idea of changing the frame on success and failure.
Mhm.
Because the bottom line is, if you're trying, you're succeeding. If you're doing something, of course, we take actions and go, nope, that's not the thing. Or I don't want to go that way. Or I have all of these options. I tried this. I don't like it. That's not a failure. It's like all the career changes, So reinvention, I love this book and I love the whole spirit of the book. And I think that we all find each other. Like you and I met and we were like, and we know each other. And we were meant to be friends. And this is just the way it is. Part of that, I think I'm very drawn to entrepreneurs who have reinvented themselves as I have in my life. And I think that there's something so hopeful and powerful, the message in this book, about the possibility of reinvention. So for you, what would you say reinvention is and why is it so important?
Yeah, I'm trying to change the paradigm on how we view the word reinvention. And for me, reinvention is not starting over. It's finishing and executing on what you have been dying to do. We all have that thing that tugs at us. What have we been denying? Right? For me, it was personal development for so long. I love that stuff. I would use it to better my life. I just didn't realize that it would be my career. So I want everybody to lean into those whispers. Get my community specifically, like 60 or 70 years old and so forth, they think it's too late. It's not. And just like you said, just to acknowledge you, like trying different things and not succeeding is data, it's lessons. You are succeeding because you're taking action. It's not just about the championship ring, it's who you become on the journey. And that's what I want to encourage everybody to do, is to lean in and divorce from the outcome, marry the process, and watch who you become in the process.
So much of your work, though, Craig, like I love that. And I love when we fall in love with the process, we are committing to present moment consciousness. We are committing to being here now. Because I feel like when we're a catastrophizing state of mind, when we're fearfully projecting into the future of how we could fail or how it could be awful or whatever the thing is, we're not here now, right? We are, like you said, when you were in that dark season of your life, you were negatively ruminating about the past and fearfully projecting into the future and not liking what was happening in the present moment. And I think there's so much power in being here now. And I love the phrase you used, falling in love with the process and realizing like this shit is not a destination because we're still going to be alive. So let me ask you, what are some small, tangible tools that people can use on their reinvention journey?
Yeah, so for anyone that's like leaning into something new and fresh and exciting, you don't have to worry about the seven-figure deals and the home runs every single day. I think so many people, and just to be clear, I absolutely encourage you to set the audacious goals, set the intentions, have the whiteboard, the vision, but then divorce from that. So many people think that those big results that they have are so far away that it paralyzes them from even getting going. So what I would suggest is set the intention, because you can't hit a target you can't see. And also, once you have an idea, it's a possibility, and then you take inspired action, now it's a probability. So that's great. Divorce from that,
Right.
and then focus on, like, what can I actually do today to get going? Right? Like, and I don't know if your audience is football fans, but as I like to say, like, you don't have to get a touchdown, but one thing that I believe everyone can control each and every single day is getting a first down, is moving the chains, just making a little bit of progress. Because at the end of the day, that just
Yeah.
comes down to effort. And the beautiful thing is you talk about being present and mindfulness, and I couldn't agree more. And when you're mindful and just super in the moment, like you and I, we don't care about anything in the future or the past, just this conversation, adding value, connecting and building rapport. That's where the fireworks happen. That's where the magic happens. And I would encourage people, whether you're hanging out with your kid or you're on a date or you're on a business meeting or you're at the gym, whatever you're doing, just be so in the moment and just stack those each and every single day. We'll really start with each and every single hour. And then at the end of 2, 3 weeks, you're going to have a ton of momentum. You're going to have stuff going on. So my best tangible tip is to just be super present with each and every single task and break it down for yourself. Reverse engineer where you want to go and just say, okay, what's step one? And just to give a quick example, like when I first started my brand, I wasn't worried about making money just yet or any of that stuff. I just wanted one thing in the world, to add value. That's all. And I knew that if I add value, people would start to connect and resonate. And some people wouldn't, and that's okay. But the right people would.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I cared about for the first couple months. And then I started to build up a buzz. And then from there, clarity follows action. Now we can monetize and all that stuff. So stack magical moments and focus on what you can actually control today.
It's so true. I love the idea of starting small. And even though we have the big audacious dreams and the things that we want to do and having that sort of macro view, I agree. You cannot hit a target you cannot see, as you said. But there is something so actually empowering in our lives if we can take any step that moves the needle in the direction that we want to go. And I I find that with clients who are afraid to make the move, right? They feel like it's too late to pivot, right? As you had said before. So what do you say for folks who feel that way? Your attitude and your teachings is that, it's never too late, and that for you to basically go all in on your real purpose. And before you answer that, I want to make a point that there's something really true about what you said about not starting from scratch. My therapy clients, like they would make progress in a certain area or in a relationship or end a relationship and then end up texting the person or whatever. And they would always, many people would say, I like ruined it all. Like I'm back at square one. And I always say, dude, it is absolutely impossible for you to unknow what you learned from step one to where you were when you took that slight step backwards.
Mhm.
This is all data for what you're doing, but I think it is important, the messaging and the frame with which you see the way that evolution happens or the possibility of pivoting, that you're building what's next, if it's your true heart's desire, on what you've already learned. Whether it's a completely different business, it doesn't matter because you have life learning that you have already had. You've developed things in your life. So, what would you say to people who kind of are poo pooing or feeling like it's too late to pivot or go all in? What are your thoughts?
I have so many things to say about that. And let's give the audience some tangible steps. Number one, if you can point to anywhere in life that you've been successful, and there's got to be at least one, if not many, it wasn't that
Mm-hmm.
thing that made you successful. It was you. And those characteristics and those traits that made you successful in one endeavor are transferable to anything
Mm-hmm.
that you want to do. And when I pivoted, I had no experience, connections, following nothing. But I knew that I had been successful in other areas such as business and running marathons, having previously not ran. And I knew that the mindset required to achieve success in those things were transferable, just kind of being a gladiator in a different arena, so to speak. So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
I always like to say, look yourself in the mirror and say three words, why not you? And also for anyone that out there that's like, you know,
I literally, Craig, I'm laughing because I say that all the time. I didn't even know you say that. With when people are like, it's not happening for me. It's not, and I'm like, what am I so special? Like
yeah,
anything that I've created, anyone can create. Like, why not you? But you have to believe it. Or why not? What I say when my clients would say, I don't want to be jealous of my friend who just got engaged, even though I really want to be married. And it's just, I just can't help but thinking, why not me? And I say, why don't you just switch that to me next?
that's a
Right?
beautiful paradigm shift.
Right? All right. Back to what you were saying. I just thought that was really funny.
No, that's great. And also, like when I tell my clients, like they want to, I always tell them to touch the dream because I think there's something good about leaning in and feeling like this is available for you. And when you walk past the Rolex store, whatever you want to do, and I don't think
Hmm.
materialistic things makes you successful, but I do think it's nice to have nice things. So instead of saying I can't afford it, change the language to how can I afford it, and then that gets your
Hmm.
brain thinking and getting creatively and so forth. So look, for anyone that thinks it's too late or it's not in the cards to them, let's just say they can't necessarily leave their 9 to 5 right now or their job and just try something new. Maybe their responsibility, kids, or the case may be. There's got to be, if you were to do an audit of your schedule and your day to day, there's got to be something that's not productive that you can take off your plate and you can replace with hyper focusing on a side hustle or getting information, listening to Terry's podcast, reading a book, going to YouTube, accumulating knowledge and information to start something new and what that might entail. And if you can just be consistent, which is a superpower, but far too many people have trouble being consistent, which boggles my mind
Yeah.
because you could control that. And just hyper focus 30 or 60 minutes a day. Maybe you wake up a little bit earlier and you focus on something that you want to create. You can lean into that. And that could take off all the pressure of, oh, if I pivot, I have no experience. So you can take baby steps. You can, inspire yourself by saying, why not you? And also, like, I know there's a big thing these days is comparison syndrome. And what I like
Hmm.
to suggest to people, and I talk about this in the book, like, first of all, social media can be, not most of it's probably not authentic and true, but let's just say it is,
Hmm.
for example. you see other people win, instead of tying an emotion to that of like envy or jealousy, clap. Because even if you don't like the person, if they're winning and they're doing something, they're showcasing what's possible. And as Terry said,
Mhm.
like nothing is super special, unique about Terry or I. We just have a ton of self belief and we're determined enough and resourceful to lean in. And I think if
Mhm.
you break it down to those things, anybody could lean in and explore what's tugging at their soul.
Absolutely. And looking at, what I think is great about the book is that you're basically sharing your experience of your own massive pivot and then giving ideas of how others can do the same in their own reinvention journey. Because I have always said and have always believed that we have many stages and phases of our lives. We have many chapters of our lives. And if you want to change, do something different in this next chapter of your life, slowly but surely is better than not at all. And actually, I love the slow and steady. And when it comes to psychotherapeutic stuff, consistency is queen, and slow and steady is the one that creates sustainable transformation. Right? We can all be like, I'm a vegan and now I ate an egg. I guess I'm not. Like that's change, but that's not transformation, right? Because transformation is in the, as you were saying, the consistency, the things that we can control about our lives, and looking at others who have done it as evidence that it's still a possibility in the world, right? People are changing careers, people are getting engaged, people are doing whatever thing it is that you want to do in your life. And I love the idea of doing something. If I had a client who, you know, loved to be a performer and they gave it up because they wanted a more stable life, let's say, I would say to them, but why aren't you still singing? Go to open mics. Do, like, not everything has to be what we do for a living.
Mm.
If it lights you up inspirationally, this is amazing fuel to have in our bodies and in our lives, and being more fully expressed. That will translate to other places in life, you know?
I couldn't agree more. And to be honest with you, I just had a breakthrough speaking to you right now. Send me an invoice. And I'm thinking, like, for me, the marathon season, well, I knew this, but you articulated so beautifully. In between the darkness and CLS and reinvention and what I'll be doing in some capacity the rest of my life, the marathon season provided me that gateway to be purposeful and find meaning and purpose again in running and running well, and the habits and discipline that came with it to be successful at it. And although I
Yep.
wasn't looking to become a professional runner, what that did
Right.
do was put me in the right frequency to become available. And then when the lockdown happened, I was ready to receive the downloads and execute. But had it not been for that marathon season, which essentially has nothing to
Oh,
do with what I'm doing now, it wouldn't have translated. So I couldn't agree more with
yes.
you. Just creativity, the curiosity, lean into that, and there's a good chance that that's going to lead to something bigger.
Yes, I love that. And the courage, right? There's something about, especially doing marathons and running when you weren't a runner before, there's a certain amount of courage and like stick to itness that you have to have. You have to train if you're going to successfully run a marathon. You can't just be like, well, that's a pie in the sky dream and I'm just going to do it and kill my hamstrings. You know what I mean? You actually have to be prepared to do it. So this sort of brings us right into a natural segue into mindset, like the importance of having a good mindset. This is a lot of what you talk about in the book. And what would you say for anyone struggling? What do you recommend they can do to start having a good mindset about their own reinvention or their own transformation or whatever is happening for them?
I think the most productive and greatest thing that anyone could do immediately following this episode is to start to be aware of your thoughts and then transform from reactive to proactive. And what I mean by that is you are not your thoughts, right? Like if you were to sit back and be a witness, you would realize that your thoughts are going with without you. So you're not your thoughts and thoughts are not facts. But most of the
Mhm.
time, the thoughts begin to, as they say, become things and create limiting beliefs, which, you know, affect our behaviors and actions and then ultimately lead to mediocre results at best. So if you were to become aware of that and say, why am I in a rut right now? What kind of feedback am I getting from the universe? Wait a minute. I must currently have disempowering and negative thoughts. And then you'd probably see, oh, yes, I do. I'm thinking I'm not worthy, or I can't pivot, or it's too late, or who wants to listen to me, or I'm not
Mhm.
handsome or pretty enough, whatever the case may be. Then all of a sudden you say, you know what? I'm going to replace those with much more empowering thoughts. I am worthy. I can figure things out. I am resourceful. I have been
Mhm.
successful in other areas. I am a
Yeah.
vibe. Now all of a sudden you create new beliefs and you change your whole physiology. And then those new beliefs start to create exciting habits and actions. All of a sudden you're going to bed a little bit earlier. You're waking up a little bit earlier. You're excited to tackle the day because your thoughts are working for you, not against you. And now all of a sudden you have brand new results. So you want to be super strategic with the thoughts that you allow to take up real estate inside your mind, because although thoughts are random, thinking is not. So let's be intentional with those. I think it's a great place to start.
I love that idea of getting a hold of our thoughts and being so aware that they aren't always, I think you know Doc Amen, right? Do you
Yeah.
know Doc Amen?
He's been
Yeah.
on the show. Great.
He yeah, he's amazing. And he talks about don't believe every stupid thing you ever think. Like there's a way to look at and challenge, change, think about as you're saying. Because when we think about the unconscious mind, and that so much of what your book is really doing, Craig, is bringing a lot of this material that's sort of been in what I would describe as the basement of your mind. We're kind of bringing it up and out, opening some windows, letting some sunshine come in, and really looking at, because if we think about the unconscious mind, right, they say it's like the best executive assistant you could ever have. And if your unconscious beliefs are limiting, right, if they're small, if they're the lack of worthiness beliefs, your unconscious mind is going to look for evidence that you, because you're the boss, is right. So instead of looking for opportunities or looking for places where, like, oh, look how nice that person was to you because you're worthy. Instead, when you're like, I'm unworthy, you're like, oh yeah, they snubbed you because you're unworthy. This is happening unconsciously, but it's like the bias that we're going through life, not even realizing what is driving or fueling that negative bias about things. When you do exactly what you said, you bring it up and you go, you know what? These thoughts work against my greatest good. They work against my goal. They work against my reinvention. They work against what I want to do. So I'm going to consciously, and that does take time and it takes effort. You can't be lazy about your thoughts. If your thoughts suck and they are self-sabotaging, we have to sort of be, mm, you know. And this brings me to, and I'm not sure if this is a connection, but I just love the idea of this as a topic, the importance of the season of grind.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. And also, just real quickly, what you were just talking about, it really brings me back to something that you talk about often, which really hits home, is the relationship you have with yourself, right? And that begins
Mhm.
with your thoughts. So be kind to
It
yourself,
does.
feed yourself positive seeds and so forth. The season of
Yes,
grind.
compassion.
Compassion, yes. So for the season of grind, so many people come to me, whether in my community or they want me to coach them, and they're like, I want to do what you're doing, Craig, in such a short time. And I'm very humbled by the success, but it wasn't overnight success. I've been working on myself for a very long time. I just put it all together. And when I say to them, okay, great, but do you want to do what I did? And what I did in the beginning of the pandemic, when I looked around, I saw a lot of that Tiger show on Netflix and day drinking, is I got to work. And just to be clear, there's an expression that if you find what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I want to make one little adjustment. And I would say, once you find what you love, you'll never feel like you're working a day in your life, right? So the big
Yeah.
difference there is in the lockdown, I was working 19, 20-hour days in the beginning, putting out content, extending my reach, doing virtual handshakes, meeting people, going into rooms, building a community. But I loved it. I look back now and like that was the magic. I was really putting myself out there. I'm yet to see anybody showcase that you can replace that early season of grind in the very beginning of creating something truly special, epic, something that could change the world. So I know like
Mhm.
woo woo and all the spiritual stuff is very big right now, and I'm big on that as well. But I believe it's responsible to marry that with some practical and some tangible. And you got to get to work in the beginning. Hopefully, it won't feel like work because you're so inspired and you love it. You're doing this for a reason, but you can't replace that early stage season grind when you're creating something truly special that's going to change the
Right.
world. So instead of being fearful of that, or like being out of it, I would embrace that, because that's where the magic happens, and that's where the foundation is really built.
I so agree. That's what I thought you were going to say. And I have to say, I love that. And I so agree because I also think that there can be a tendency to, or I see this online, someone gets out of school and like 6 months later, they're like, I'm a trauma expert. I'm like, you're definitely not. You aren't. I promise you that in 8 months, you're not. You have not seen enough clients. And the thing is, you can be well versed at something and not expect to be an expert on it in 8 months. And so I think that the willingness to become a veritable expert at what it is that you're talking about, because you're willing to put those hours in and do the time. And I agree with you. It doesn't have to feel like drudgery or something terrible, right? It feels like I get to do this
Mm.
for a living. How amazing. And let me honor myself and my craft and my practice and what I'm putting out there by actually putting in the hours of working. And I just feel like there's so much visibility now with social media, and people can be really good at doing that end of it. And I'm like, right, but we want to be good at both ends of it. We want to be good at, it can't be all sizzle and no steak.
Oof.
There's got to be sizzle and steak. You know what I mean?
For me, it's like the balance between the masculine and the feminine. And you would definitely know this better than I would, but from my understanding, I believe like the masculine is the grind, the go, 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 the do, and the feminine is more allow and be and receive. But if you can find a happy medium in between that, that's the perfect formula. No pun intended.
Yeah. Yes, and it's true. I think that these are considered masculine and feminine sort of traits that are within any gendered person. And
Okay.
it's sort of like, what do you tap into? And can you find a balance? Because I find that being a recovering workaholic myself, I had so much masculine and so much grind and so much never stop, where, I came from, my father is a workaholic. So, a lot of this is learned behavior too. And so, getting a meditation practice 20 years ago, finding all of these ways to bring in more of the feminine and for myself to have more balance, I think is really important to do. There's one last question here, and then I have a boundary question for you.
Sure.
So, how important, you talk about this in the book, is the power of the second thought?
Yeah. It goes back to what we were discussing earlier, right? Like, I think backed by science, like maybe 80% of our thoughts over the course of the day are negative, which is a really staggering, crazy stat. And we get a lot of thoughts, right? So just understanding, just being aware that my thoughts are not facts, they're not real. I can decide. So now I didn't like that one. I can choose a different one, right? So for example,
Mm-hmm.
let's say you wanted to make a sales call. I'm just giving an example. But your first thought was, oh, I'm not in a great state, or, I don't have a rebuttal, or what if they say no? And then let me choose a different thought. I'm going to make a great connection. It's going to become a lead. I'm going to provide value. If they want to take it, great. And if not, it'll be a lead for next time. And at least I'll make a connection. That's a second thought. And in my opinion, that's much more productive. So just
Right.
understanding that you have a choice. You can always choose a different thought. And then all of a sudden your perspective changes. And perspective's everything, isn't it, Terry?
It's unbelievable how the frame or the lens with which you view yourself, your relationships, your potential in life is literally everything, and the beauty. And you put this so beautifully in the text of the book itself, of that you can change your mind. This is the most empowering thing. And when I think about the things that I've achieved in my life, it was on the back of me giving myself permission to change my friggin' mind, to course correct, to change, and not making myself wrong for it, just being able to do it.
100%. Couldn't agree
All
more.
right. So, you guys, the author is Craig Siegel. The book, which is out right now, it's available right now. It's called The Reinvention Formula. This is pre-orders. So you want to get in there and get it at this moment in time. I ordered mine, even though you sent me a digital one. I still ordered mine
Love
because
you.
that's exciting. And that's what authors do, is support each other. All right. I have a boundary question that I want to ask you. So
Yeah.
personally, what has been your most challenging boundary struggle, and how did you overcome it if you have?
Yeah, this is great. For me, it's weird. Since I really reinvented myself, my identity, I found it easier and easier to detach from things or people that no longer have much in common with me, or that don't provide value, respectfully. And so what I like to do now, and I'm super intentional and selective with this, is I like to surround myself with people that have a common future as me, not a common past, right? And like, I don't speak to many of the people from my previous life, like 2.5 years ago. And it's not because I'm right, they're wrong, I'm better, they're worse. Not at all. I've just evolved so much. I'm not the same cat that I was 3 weeks ago. And it's like, you're not really outgrowing people because they have a choice to outgrow you, grow with you. So for me, it's like I protect my energy for the life of me. I'm so big on energy, and I'm so big on feedback. So if I find myself interacting with someone a couple times and I leave that encounter at like a deflated frequency or vibration, I'm collecting data. I'm like, all right, so this is on me. I just don't like the way I feel when I'm around that person, and I need to set a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Or another paradigm
Right.
is a boundary or a standard for myself. And what kind of standards are you setting for yourself if you're allowing people in your bubble to deflate you or bring you down? So boundaries and standards are huge for me. I think the biggest thing for me is my family, my immediate family is everything to me. They'll have a whole past forever. I'll always be there, of course. But like some of my distant family, like cousins and so forth, like I have to make choices. I'm all in on what I'm doing now in my life, and CLS and the book and my fiance and all the things. And you can't say yes to everything anymore. Something has to be sacrificed. So I'm super intentional what I say yes to, and I know you appreciate this. If it's not a hell yes, then I think it's a hell no, and I really stick by that.
Right. Right. I love that. I love that so much. Well, this was super fun, Craig. Thanks for being on here. You guys, the author is Craig Siegel, and the book is The Reinvention Formula, available for pre orders right now. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate you. Love you.